On this Memorial Day weekend, we remember those lost in service to our country. We've also had a really tough couple of weeks dealing with gun violence in this country. A lot of loss, a lot of pain, a lot of grief. So today, as you listen to the words of this prayer that Jesus prayed for his disciples, I hope that you will be claimed by that love, comforted by that love, connected to others by that love, and then called to share that love with others. So listen to the living word of the Lord from the Gospel of John, chapter 17, verses 20 through 26. I ask not only on behalf of these, but also on behalf of those who will believe in me through their word, that they may all be one. As you, Father, are in me and I am in you, may they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. The glory that you have given me, I have given them, so that they may be one as we are one, I in them and you in me, that they may become completely one, so that the world may know that you have sent me and have loved them even as you have loved me. Father, I desire that those also whom you have given me may be with me where I am, to see my glory, which you have given me because you loved me before the foundation of the world. Righteous Father, the world does not know you, but I know you, and these know that you have sent me. I made your name known to them, and I will make it known, so that the love with which you have loved me may be in them and I in them. Holy wisdom, holy words, thanks be to God. So before we start, I want you to hear disciples as very inclusive and not just 12 men. The Passover celebration was a family celebration. Women, men, and children gathered from all over to enact the Passover Seder. And I truly believe that Jesus spoke to them all in these final words. Last Thursday night, we held a vigil for those lost in Uvalde. As we packed up our stuff, a man walked his golden retriever in the courthouse square and gravitated to the three of us with collars on, launching into a confrontational diatribe on the glorification of war that he saw in the town square with the monument and in the town itself with pictures of those who lost their lives in war. I agreed that we often do tend to glorify war. I think we saw it in the young man in Uvalde, Texas, who went into that school outfitted as a soldier going into combat. But I also disagreed with him, sharing that I saw expressions of love and gratitude for service to our country. He continued to complain, launching into criticism of church and faith. It was stupid. It was non-intellectual, a fantasy world, worthless to real life. I kept saying, well, that's not my experience. I'd love to have a conversation about this with you. Presbyterians are really a thinking church. We do not encourage checking your brain at the door. None of that's my experience. I would love to talk more about this sometime. And his last vehement word was judgmental. All the time he was talking at me, his dog was doing what golden retrievers do best, loving. That dog just leaned into whoever was closest and was rewarded, of course, with petting and love. So the whole time I'm getting a litany of all the things wrong with the church and the world. This 80-pound dog is leaning into me, tail slowly wagging, eyes focused on me, fully present love. I've been trying to find a way into this sermon, an image that captured the final words that Jesus spoke to his disciples in this segment of the prayer he prayed. And experiencing that bodily sensation, that quiet pressure of the dog's leaning, was the incarnational image. Jesus washed his disciples' feet that evening to demonstrate the nature of the love he practiced and intended for his disciples to practice. That foot washing, that servant's act, symbolically conveyed all that Jesus did to transform the lives of his disciples. He didn't ever offer power or wealth, status, or success. He didn't tell the disciples to make Judaism all about him and then build a new temple. He didn't talk about starting a new religion called Christianity. He gave no commentary on hierarchy or institutional control. His command on that evening was love. And it was not the first time that the disciples had heard about this love from their master. Jesus' identity grew from God's love leaning into him, being claimed by God, being connected to God. And then Jesus leaned into his disciples to accomplish the same. This was his one last evening, his final face-to-face opportunity to help his disciples understand this call to love. And with his actions, his words, and his prayer, he actualizes God's love. He makes that love real, embodied. His love leaned into his disciples, and his love leans into us. The power of prayer is a deep leaning. I really received no greater gift than someone praying for me. Every time I talk to Ruth Will, she says, "I'm praying for you, honey," and every time I tear up. Jesus prays for his disciples on this last evening and for us. I ask not only on behalf of these, but also on behalf of those who will believe, Jesus prays. His mission depends on his disciples maintaining his presence in the world. As Jesus was, so the disciples are to be in the world. And that is the fundamental command of love that claims and connects and calls. That message is very different from what most of us were taught about what evangelism meant. It was kind of a mission focused on particular spoken words that you would say to someone, particular words that they would say to God, whether or not they rejected or accepted the premise. If words spoken had been the focus of my witness and conversation with that young man, if I'd responded by trying to convince him he was wrong or tell him what he needed to think or say to be saved, we would have all lost. He wasn't going to be convinced of any opinion but his own at that point in time. But in the midst of all the darkness in the world on that day, in that week, in the endless barrage of words and opinions that come at us that don't even intend to bring consensus, in the myriad ways to interpret everything that surrounds us, I stood in the square and a dog leaned. And I hope my invitation to conversation was at least heard. I didn't walk away. I didn't try to win. And I really pray that my response was some incarnational leaning that will leave a memory, a connection for the young man. Really, it was the best I could do in the moment, not having brought my foot washing supplies. Jesus lived out of the claim of God's love on his life, and his prayer asks for that connection to continue. He prays, "The glory that you have given me, I have given them, so that they may be one as we are one, I in them and you in me. That they may become completely one, so that the world may know that you have sent me and have loved them even as you have loved me." That long progression of love that flows through humanity since our creation, this love that claims and connects and calls, doesn't depend on how we feel. The law that Jesus studied, respected, and said he came to fulfill demands obedience to God's command, obedience to love, then actually grows the feeling of love. God creates us out of love, in need of love, and miraculously able to be a conduit of God's love to the world. And this is Jesus' final teaching before he again enacts love as he dies for love and then lives again through love. It sounded like the shooter in Uvalde was a hard person to love, and I can't help but wonder that if he had had community that leaned into him with love and continued to lean into him, would he have learned a different way? We're not asked to just love the easy folks. We all fall short of being loved and of loving as we are commanded. And that's why Jesus prayed for us, I'm sure. And that's why we are grateful for the gift of love we have received through God's leaning into us, claiming us before we are able to recognize who God is, how God is at work in our lives, claiming us even when we resist that claim. We're grateful for the leaning of Jesus as well, that leaning that connects us to each other and to God. And I hope, well, that we will answer our call to lean into the love of God and neighbor, so that the amazing power of this love is made visible, incarnational. Amen.